This is the Timeform Radio Anti-Post podcast.
And we are looking ahead to the weekend, and there's only one place that we will kick off with, and that's Ascot. Champions Day this coming Saturday, but I have to pre-warn everyone, it's going to be a very wet Ascot. The going already as we speak on Tuesday at the time of this podcast is officially heavy, and Keith Melrose is with us to dissect three races. We'll be looking at the Champion Stakes itself, the QE2, and also the big sprint as well. How tricky is it, Keith, with the conditions now making it as an anti-post proposition for the weekend?
Well, I think now, Alan, we're at the stage where we can say it's going to be soft ground, so there's at least that known unknown, if you will, that we know we're going to have a real test of stamina and really soft ground at Ascot on Saturday, which gives us something to go at, but it is a caveat to everything we're going to talk about here. We're looking at horses, some of which aren't proven on softer grounds. A lot of them are, though, and I think when you're looking at it from an anti-post perspective now, you now have to look for horses who are proven on testing conditions.
And it's lucky we're doing this podcast a few days before, because doing it last week, we would have seen a few selections go by the wayside.
Certainly would have. I think it is a testament, I think, now to the Champions Day as it stands now, and how far it's come in such a short space of time, that even though we've lost Australia, we've lost Kingman, we've lost the Grey Gatsby, we still have, I think, all six of these races that are presented to us on Saturday as we see them now are at least up to scratch for their grade, and in many cases exceed it. So I think that's really a good thing for Champion Stakes as a whole. Of course, we'd have liked Kingman and such to have been here, but we still have a day worthy of the title, really. OK, well, let's kick off by getting some audio clues and a reminder of the finish from last year's race.
So turning in, Hunter's Light, Far, just trying to stack them up before kicking for home. Cirrus de Ziegler shadowing his rival into the race. Tongue lolling out Parish Hall then towards the outside. Rule of the World. Hunter's Light's taken Far beautifully into the race. Cirrus de Ziegler's got a couple of lengths to find. Then Rule of the World. It's Far, the lock-inch winner from Cirrus de Ziegler, the previous Champion Stakes winner, and a Derby winner. Rule of the World on the outside. The Champion Stakes is up for grabs. Far, Cirrus de Ziegler, and Ruler of the World. Far by a neck. Cirrus de Ziegler at this stage can't get by. Far, all out, will win the Champion Stakes. Far beating to second place. Cirrus de Ziegler in third, Ruler of the World. Three class horses, all clear. Back in fourth place then, Hunter's Light was 8 lengths away.
And it must be said as well that Far, who was really classy on the day in soft ground in 2013, got a really good ride from Silvestre de Sousa, and arguably Cirrus de Ziegler just had to come from a little further back that wasn't ideal. And it's a good place to start, Keith, with the 8-year-old who's running in this race for the fourth time. Can you tell me his Timeform rating, and is he nearly as good as he once was? Does that reflect them in the figures?
I think with Cirrus de Ziegler, he's not quite as good as his very best. He's 8 now, so you're not going to expect that sort of thing. But last year, obviously, it was a cracking race, and he ran right up to a rating that day of 130. Timeform still have him rated on that same figure. We had him running to it in the Ganny when he beat Trev back in April there. And since then he's run a couple of times, been very close to that and winning the Dispahan, and then when winning the Coronation Cup as well. They've been within hailing distance of that 130 rating without actually being up there with it. Last time he ran in the Prix-Dollar after a break, he wasn't quite at that level. 118 we had him running to just a little bit below his best, but obviously now he was first past the post that day, was relegated for it. But I think taking the performance as it was, you say it's a satisfactory one for him coming back, and with that 130 beside his name, he is setting the standard here again this year.
He's been an amazing racehorse. I mean, for an 8-year-old to still compete and be a massive force at Group 1 level is astonishing.
Well, yes, but you wonder how many horses would have done the same given the chance. Its circumstances conspire against Cirrus de Ziegler. Of course, he's not had the option of going to stud, being a gelding. You wonder how many horses would have stayed at this level for so long. We're still trying to find an 8-year-old that ran to 130 before. We've not been able to find one yet, as far as we can gather on Timeform figures. So that's just a reminder of how good and how well Cirrus de Ziegler has lasted.
And unfortunately, he's not missed in the market, because on the sportsbook, as we speak on Tuesday, Cirrus de Ziegler is 6-4 to back from Free Eagle. We'll discuss him. But Noble Mission at 9-2. He is your tentative nod here. We know he's going to handle the conditions. Is that a massive factor for his chance in the race?
Well, that's what we said at the top of the show. It's going to be all about who can handle conditions, and the sort of secondary factor when you're talking about such testing conditions is you often get it proves difficult to peg leaders back. And leading races has been really the transformation in Noble Mission this year. He had a lot of issues with his temperament. He was a bit of a shirker, quite frankly, before this season. He has just been completely revamped this year for being ridden more positively. He's won a couple of Group 1s and a couple of other races besides. He's a full brother to Frankel, of course, who won the race a couple of years ago. And I just think it's, on ability, Noble Mission's probably fourth in this race. Cirrus de Zegle's a better horse than him. Ruler of the World would be a better horse than him. And so I reckon would be Free Eagle. We'll see that in time, no doubt. But with the way you can see the race going, if Noble Mission gets his own way up front a little bit in testing conditions where it can prove difficult to make up ground, there's just an outside chance he'll get away from them a little bit, and his price reflects his ability without necessarily reflecting the circumstances that could transpire.
Yeah, could you just picture, Keith, trying to visualise the race, him leading on the turn and kicking on, and maybe, I mean, he's not going to go mad, is he, from the front? I know he stays at 1.5 miles, but if something's trying to come from the rear and he kicks on again off that turn, he will be dangerous.
That's right. That's the thinking. If you're going, I think in terms of ability, the market's got it just about there, and that's the sort of edge you have. The one sort of qualifier again is that Kingfisher's in here for O'Brien.
Yeah.
He'll be a pacemaker for Ruler of the World if he runs. Kingfisher's also in the Long Distance Cup and could be a pacemaker for Leading Light. So Kingfisher could have an impact from that regard. But I think if we get a pace scenario that could suit Noble Mission on this testing ground, he's maybe the one I'd be, if I was forced into having a bet, it would be on Noble Mission in the Champion Stakes. But I think this is one I'll let the purists have, to be quite honest. Are
you surprised at the shortness of Free Eagle's price this week? I think at one point when Australia was in the decks, I think it was probably last week in fact, that he was actually shorter than Australia, which is quite astonishing to think that what Australia has done this season, Free Eagle's just won, and I say just won, a Group 3.
Yeah, well, Free Eagle, he looked very, very good in winning that Group 3. He was a horse, I think he had been favourite for the Derby anti-post and just looked a cut above in that Leopardstown race. I think it was an Irish Champions weekend. I don't think he should have been ahead of Australia. I think Australia has been unfairly tarred for that defeat on Irish Champions weekend. I think Free Eagle, we've got him 128p. He'd have needed to improve £4 or £5 on that in order to challenge a fully fledged Australia in the Champion Stakes. We now sadly will never know, but I think that price was a bit wrong. His price now around 3 to 1 is much more realistic, and I wouldn't put anybody off backing him at that sort of price. He could be a real top class prospect.
Okay, Keith, then confirm your selection for the Champion Stakes.
Yeah, it would be Noble Mission, just from a pace scenario as much as an ability one.
Timeform TV Focus. The biggest meetings demand the best analysis. Get the expert Timeform view on the big races with TV Focus. Check out timeform.com.
And now let's look at the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes, another Group 1 on the card. It will be coming up at 3:30 on the Saturday. Over a mile. Sadly, no Kingman, of course, but with the ground testing, who knows if he would have shown up. And again, it's a case of who won't be here. But we'll go through the runners and a couple of interesting selections. And it's worth listening back to a race at Newmarket earlier this season for a form guide with a couple of them.
They just passed halfway. Outstrip just in behind the leaders, followed by Order Combat and then Master Carpenter. The light blue of Captain Cat, 3 from the rear of the field and just being encouraged along by James Doyle. Professor is the back marker, Angel towards the rear. Heading down well past the bushes now. Cable Bay and the yellow cap has joined Custom Cut. Wanna Be Yours is their producer behind those. Captain Cat is coming there towards the right with the noseband, is moving into a challenging position. Tullius comes next. It's now in the red and white jacket, Custom Cut leading from Captain Cat, who's hanging in second position. Custom Cut looking for the 5-timer. It's going to be a big 5-timer as well with Daniel Tudhope. He's won by a good few lengths. Captain Cat in second. Order Cambot might have grabbed third late on from Tullius and producer.
And Custom Cut, the winner that day, Captain Cat the second, and Tullius, who was back in fourth. Now, we know Tullius will handle the soft ground, and indeed Custom Cut will be. And this is some run this season, and he's done this before, hasn't he?
Custom Cut?
Yeah.
Yeah, he has. He's really earned his place in this sort of grade. That was the Joel Stakes that we heard commentated on there. It was his 5th win in a row, Custom Cut. It's more about his style, or as much about his style of how he's done it, as the actual form achieved, and why I think Custom Cut's really interesting in this QE2. Of course, Kingman's not here now, so you have Night of Thunder and Charm Spirit and Tornado as your main form contenders, whereas Custom Cut is he's only 2 or 3 pounds behind him on the Timeform scale. Night of Thunder's top on 137 adjusted, Custom Cut is 134 adjusted. And we talked about Noble Mission in the Champion Stakes. Custom Cut is from a very similar stripe. We don't have the former concerns about him that we do about Noble Mission. He is just a straight out, go from the front and really respond strongly type of horse. He's done it over a stiff mile in the Joe Stakes there at Newmarket last time, as we discussed. He's done it on slightly more testing ground. He's never quite proved himself on the heaviest of ground. He has run well and won on heavy, but his very, very best form has come, and no worse than good to soft. So that's your only question mark. But it's the conditions that do lend themselves to horses like Custom Cut, horses who do go off in front, who just get that little bit of a lead and who respond when they're challenged. So he's a horse from a pace angle who's very, very interesting, and it may surprise some people to see how close he is to the others on bare form and on what he's achieved. So combine the two of them and I think you've got a reasonable bet at 10-1.
Yeah, that's his price. A bit shorter than Tullius, who was 4th that day. If it would have been soft, would he have got closer? And is Tullius the sort of horse that runs to a figure and you get a run for your money at that price for the race?
I think so. With Tullius that day at the Joe Stake, I think it's fair to say he was only probably as much as you can be out for a run in a Group 2. That's what it was. This was always a big day, I think, with Tullius. He's a horse that goes especially well on the softer going, and you suspect after being given a break after Royal Ascot, you strongly suspect that coming back for the QE2 had been the target since then. The Joe Stakes was entirely satisfactory in that regard. He travelled well enough and just looked like he wasn't quite fit to fade out of things late on. Now everything's in his favour. He's back at Ascot where he's run so well in the past. He's back under testing conditions, which is what suits him best. And Tullius is, as we know, a really sort of solid miler. He won the Sandown Mile there back in April, second in the Lockinge, and then made the frame in the Queen Anne.